Welcome to the Kindness Project, the podcast designed to share stories of kindness and share how kindness can make positive change in our world, one small act at a time.
This week on the Kindness Project, we talk about vintage books, and we have part one of Sam Oakes from the Financial Planner Life podcast.
Welcome to the Kindness Project. The free podcast bants has already started. I'm getting stick for injuring somebody else. I'm trying to share the fact that I'm kind enough not to injure people, but apparently I've injured people in my life. But let's first do the introductions. I'm joined by a man who's just bought a camera and he's going to tell us about it. It's Russ. And a girl who is continuing as a podcast trend to wear a beanie. It's Charlotte and Russ. How are we doing today, guys?
Not so bad.
I bought something too.
Share your purchase.
They've got a vintage fair that runs here like once a month of like vintage
But
clothes.
for the listeners of the podcast, where's here?
Glasgow.
I'm sure they already know that by now.
Yeah.
I mean, regular new listeners might, but as we get quite a few new listeners, I thought I'd point out. So you're up in Glasgow in Scotland. They've got a vintage fair.
Yeah.
And what did you buy at the vintage fair?
Just a couple of new T-shirts because they've got £20 for a certain weight. So if you like,
You buy them by the bag.
Yeah, you buy them by the bag.
And if you're 14 stone, you'd have to pay extra.
No, they don't have to give us Russ.
That's so good. Are you saying that heavier people need to pay more for their clothes?
Well, it is true. You use more material, don't you?
Well, I mean, that is true. I mean, is an extra large T-shirt more expensive than a small?
Larger bras are more expensive than smaller ones.
Yes.
Yeah. So
I don't know about bras, but
right. So that, don't you? Are you sure? Are you sure?
No.
Right. So let me give you a scenario, Russ. You're out in Glasgow. You go to a vintage clothes fair, and you turn up with a bag of clothes, and you go to the counter and you go, "I'll have this bag of clothes, please." And they go, "I'm not going to do the accent. You'll be pleased to know." No worries. Jump on the scales. Jump on the scales. What are you going to say, Russ? No worries.
Now, talking about that, I've been in places like, what's it called, Dorothy Perkins' Men or something like that, where I was looking for a suit and I wish I had worn my girdle because they just don't go up to the right sizes. But
Yeah.
You're quite a big fella, aren't you?
Yeah, I am quite a large.
I mean, if they sold clothes based on weight, we'd be paying quite. I mean, both of us are quite big, aren't we? But we'd be paying quite a lot of money.
I like to think of myself as big boned rather than large fella.
You can think of yourself in whatever way you want. The reality is, he's big boned. Right, let's just have this conversation. He's big boned.
Yeah, you can be very broad and slim.
I mean, yes, you've got a natural genetic body shape, haven't you?
Yes.
Potentially, but you also have some autonomy to change your body shape either through diet or exercise. Is that fair to say?
I'm very large naturally and even larger as an adult through eating and stuff like that.
I mean, we used to be skinny, Russ.
We did.
It was a long time ago.
I've still got pictures of when I was fully skinny. Yeah.
I remember when the two of you were. Well, I don't remember it myself. I remember seeing pictures of the two of you as twigs, and I'm like,
yeah. And I'm not in bad shape, but that shape isn't the shape it was when I was 17. Clearly, it's a bit of a different one now. It's a bit chunkier, bit sort of. There's spare bits. But I'm like I always think that fitness, as opposed to worrying about weight, is probably the way to go. Clearly carrying too much weight can have an impact on that as well.
My biggest downfall. when I was at my slimmest, I was walking everywhere, doing whatever I wanted to, and I wasn't eating small meals. I'd eat a pack of pasta at a time and stuff like that, but I was exercising it off.
Well, we were watching because you were down seeing us this
Yeah.
week, Russ,
I
weren't
was.
you? And uh, effectively, we were watching Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares, and they had one of your pasta meals on Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares, didn't they?
I did.
I mean, there was a lot of pasta there. It looked like one of your dinners, and you did mention that.
And
Should we start, chap? Should we start a shop where what you charge is based on what you weigh?
No.
But the opposite. The
you
opposite.
say
Heavy people get cheaper clothes.
this is another bad habit you have. You say, should we start a shop? And then I'll get a call saying, oh, do this, Russ, do that, Russ. I
Right.
need this doing, Russ.
And your point being?
Point being is, you say we, your primary...
My role in it, Rose, is a different role, isn't it? My role is in the like I've got to focus on what I'm good at.
Which is what?
Absolutely nothing, which is why you get to do the work. On that note, what did I want to talk about? Oh yeah, right. Here's what I'm going to talk about as well. We'll get on some podcast related stuff. I'm writing book number 3 at the minute. So just for our podcast listeners, book number 2, the Kindness Project book, is available on Amazon. We'll put the links on the show notes. It's selling fairly well, as far as I know. And I'm speaking at loads of events at the minute, promoting the book, talking about our journey through the last 5 years of the Kindness Project, talking a lot about my mum, which is very cathartic, interestingly. I'm really enjoying talking about my mum when I go out and speak at events. If you've read the book, you know the story. If you haven't read the book, it's quite a personal one for all of us, isn't it, really? Because that, I think I share the story about our experience heading back to Tokyo on the bullet train, crying our eyes out, Charlotte, in the book.
I don't remember you crying. I remember me sobbing like a child.
I was in tears. I was in absolute state. Don't you remember?
You've always been a bit emotional, though, haven't you? Now, I never cried once until I got home, and that was only for like 4 minutes, 5 minutes. I haven't been able to cry.
You know what my experience with being more open emotionally is. The older I get, the more it happens.
Yeah, I don't know where I lost that though, because I was quite an emotional.
Well, you haven't lost it, I don't think.
I was quite an emotional child, but I've gone totally the opposite way, where I can't show emotion now.
Yeah, I think. I mean, look, I'm no psychologist, but I think sometimes we do that to protect ourselves. Would you agree with that, Charlotte?
Mm.
But if we think we're protecting ourselves at the expense of our own mental health, we need to think about, being more open emotionally. That would be my perspective on it.
If we're talking about Nan, one of the things I remember about after she died was, and I always think about it, sort of like it's part of my train of thought whenever I think about it, is when at the funeral Russ got stuck.
When was that?
He got stuck. And everyone was laughing. And I always think about it. He got trapped when he was trying to get out of the pew.
I remember now.
You got trapped in the pews.
Yeah, you blocked one side, and Kay was the other side of me.
Yeah.
I couldn't get out, and when we was throwing the roses.
Yeah, and I remember hearing someone say, as everyone was laughing, this is what she would have wanted, and it was just like,
you know what? But this is the important thing. Like I'm talking, when I'm going out and talking about the book, I'm talking about the fact that part of one of the things I'm grateful for, and it sounds like a weird thing to be grateful for, but one of the things that I'm really grateful for is being able to talk to her about what she wanted at the funeral and who she wanted to speak and all of that sort of stuff. And not everybody gets that opportunity. But she said, I want it to be full of funny stories.
Yeah.
I want Russ to get stuck in a pew. I mean, she didn't say that
That's
specifically.
exactly what she said.
I didn't. You did it on purpose, Russ, didn't you? I don't think she said that specifically, but I agree that she would have appreciated
Yeah,
that.
and it's just
Yeah.
one of the things I
Yeah.
always think about is just how everyone broke into laughter, and it was just like,
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? I mean, mum memories of Nan and mum are funny. I
yeah,
always remember like playing Cards Against Humanity with her, and her just. And I'm not going to mention the
It
sort of
was
stuff she came out with,
always
but but
for a laugh.
yeah, exactly. You know, joy. It was a
I've-
joy. It was a joyful experience.
I know the card you're talking about. I think I actually stole it. I think it's actually on my shelf.
Yeah, you kept it, didn't you?
Yeah, it's in
You kept
it's
it
in
as
one
a.
of my
You
photo
took it
frames.
out of the pack and kept it as a memory. I remember. Yeah. So there's all of that is really good. So here's where I am. Right. So speaking a lot about book number 2, Kindness Project book available now. If you put the Kindness Project Chris Dames into Amazon, you'll find it. We'll put in all the show notes. And if you're in either London or Essex, and you've got an audience you'd like to come and talk to about kindness and our experience through the podcast and through writing the book, feel free to get in touch. I'm doing that at the minute. My aim for the Kindness Project book is to raise as much money as possible for the hospice and fromThe hospice, where 100% of the profits are going to. So if you'd like me to come with a handful of copies of books that I could sell on the day when I speak, and you want somebody to, whatever audience you've got, to feel a bit inspired by people doing good in the world, which I've been told the presentation does. Let me know. Get in touch. You can. Well, how can people email us? We haven't done that for a while, have we?
Holler at thekindnessproject.co.uk.
So holla, HOLA at thekindnessproject.co.uk.
Something now. She just
I know
knows
she's
it
good.
off that.
She does.
I've known it like that since like end of year 1, Russ.
It's very good to know, Charlotte. Do you know we don't have an Instagram, but
no, all friends are united. But
We
if you'd
had
like,
Instagram at one point, but it just posted like,
yeah, it wasn't all that.
yeah, no, it was just sort of repostings of like the box photos from the episodes.
Yeah, the episodes.
Yeah.
but if you'd like me to do that, happy to get involved, time permitting, as always.
Is that best to reach out to you on your own personal Twitter? I was going to say
Yeah, you
Facebook,
can do at
but you
Chris
don't have that.
Dames. Yeah, at Chris Dames, but then that's not a job I can delegate to Russ, because I deal with my own personal Twitter. So
It's not.
look at him shaking his head. No, so yeah, get in touch if you'd like, and we're happy to come along. As I say, my aim with the Kindness Project book is to make sure we're raising as much, sharing the stories of kindness, sharing the stories of inspiration and optimism, and making sure that as many people feel as that there is hope in the world. So would love to do that. Here's my question for book number 3.
Whoa.
Okay.
Feel free to reach out to me on my personal Twitter at Charlotte J Dames, but do know it will eventually get back to Russ down the pipeline.
Unbelievable. Flagrant self-promotion. Well, reach out on my Twitter that I never use. At Russell.
So just bear in mind that the more you email us, the more Russ gets to do the work. So even though Charlotte and I are completely relaxed about that, Russ's idea of opening a shop in Norwich, the best city in the world, that basically charges you based on how much you weigh personally, called
Now-
Scales for You, is the name of the
We
shop.
could have called it Fat Face, but there's already a shop called it.
Fat Face was already taken, so apparently Russ said. So Scales for You is what we're going to be calling it. That will be deferred. Now, because that is the worst business idea I've ever heard in my life, we don't want Russ to open that shop. So please send us as many emails as you can,
Now,
is what I'm saying.
From Russ's point of view, you're more than welcome to email. I'm quite happy to ignore you.
Oh,
Welcoming Russ. That's what we want on the Kindness Project, clearly. Right. So let me get to the book, the question that I'm contemplating today. Because as you know, guys, and the podcast listeners might not, today is a Friday. Today is meant to be my writing day.
Yep.
I've actually got some writing done today for my third book.
what genre have you gone with?
It's business related.
Sorry?
Business related, isn't it?
It's a combination of romance, sci-fi, horror, and fantasy. How does that sound?
What happened to that dystopian novel you were working on?
Oh, and dystopia. I'm adding that bit on the edge.
It's that book in an end of the world, fat face from the future.
Fat face from the future.
Buy him for your husband.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Right, no. The book is called What Happens Next. It is good.
Time
It's not going
travel.
to be business.
Nothing.
What happens next? You open a shop in Norwich just for large people. No, what it's going to be called What Happens Next, and it's about that transition we all make in our lives when we hit middle age. Charlotte, clearly you don't know.
I'm getting there.
Yeah, you take your time, mate. But when we hit our sort of 40s and 50s and thinking about after a successful career, what else we might want to do with our lives. And I'm thinking, this is what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about happiness and well-being and what one to write about. Because is consistent and constant happiness actually
I don't think you can be consistently and constantly happy.
Yeah, this is the interesting thing. I don't think you can either. I think
No.
we can improve our overall well-being,
Yeah.
but and again be happier more often. But I don't think the aspiration is just a level state of consistent happiness.
I think life is not about being happy. It's overcoming the challenges the best way you can. To be honest,
For a man who had the worst business idea in the world 10 minutes ago, that was very insightful, Russ.
thanks, Jarvis.
It's like there was a podcast.
Sorry, did you use AI tech to give
No.
you the answer there? I'm glad.
It's not that quick, but that's the way I feel. From my personal experience, it's having the time to overcome the challenges, and when you're truly happy is when you have succeeded in overcoming a challenge. But there's always a challenge to overcome.
How about just enjoyable experiences in your?
I find
it's a bit more difficult for us. Go on.
I find it quite hard to enjoy experiences, but that's a personal thing with my anxieties, and that's something I'm trying to work on. So,
yeah. But again, some of the challenges might be trying those experiences and realizing you can do it.
Once I've done them, the feeling of elation is there.
Yeah.
Actually getting to the point of doing them, it is a lot harder than it sounds.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think that's personal for you, isn't it? In terms of that. What's your? Yeah, no, I mean it is personal for everybody, but what I'm trying to do is writing the book in a way that isn't generic, but is helpful to as many people as possible. Because I want it to be practically specific, but I don't want it to be. So yeah, I'm just. So what's your take on happiness versus well-being, Charlotte?
I think like happiness versus well-being.
Or happiness and well-being. Let's put it that way.
I think happiness is more of like a temporary sort of like it comes and goes. And well-being is something both are temporary, but like I think sometimes you have to struggle a little bit to be okay.
Yeah. I think consistent happiness is a fallacy because you need challenge and a bit of resistance. And I don't know. What do you think?
I've seen a lot of like pieces of media that sort of criticize the nature of fairy tale endings, which I think is sort of similar to the like, you know,
Yeah.
being happy forever idea. And there's just a
Yeah.
lot of pieces of media that criticize the idea of happily ever after.
Which is
Are really
which
interesting.
is I think part of the problem is we aspire to that when
Yeah.
in reality life just isn't like that,
Yeah,
is it? It's just
and like a lot of these things that criticize this are like they have the happy ending, and then there's life after, and you still
Yeah.
got to do the struggles of life after.
what happens next.
What
Yeah.
happens next is a lot of things that fairy tales and stuff like that don't consider, and it doesn't. The problems don't just stop because you've had one good ending. You've still got things to do. You've still got struggles to go through in life.
That's right.
But you keep fighting and you keep reaching that happy ending, and you can have multiple happy sort of conclusions in life.
But
And
isn't that what well-being's about? Continuing that,
Well, yeah.
continuing to grow, develop,
go
and
in-
learn as a
They
human
do go
being.
hand in hand.
Yeah.
Focusing
But that I might pinch that as a concept for the book, like the fallacy of the fairy tale ending, and how in fact we are all on a journey of learning, development, and yeah, it's an interesting one.
yeah, a lot of fiction media that challenges fairy tale endings and happily ever afters is just really interesting to me, and I just love it. I love it as a concept of things addressed in fiction media. So just the question, that's what my brain associates it with.
Yeah. You know what the other there's a really good philosopher I like, a guy called Alan de Botton. He's a modern day philosopher, and he talks about the concept of, and again this is the fictional concept that we've all bought into as an aspirational goal, romanticism. Like this element where you fall in love and there's such a thing as a perfect partner, like life partner, and there's like as soon as you love at first sight and all of this sort of stuff, when in reality relationships aren't perfect. Any relationship has sort of quirks, and it takes work from both sides, because this idea of finding your one or finding the right person for you is actually destructive to the way we get into relationships, because the assumption is that once you find your one, that's it, and in reality is you've always got to try and consistently.
That's the way life used to be, though. I've talked to people that are in their 60s, 70s now. Like Kelly's mum and dad, they've been married 42 years, couldn't see themselves being with anybody else. And that generation was very much like that. That was.
I don't agree, Russ. I mean, I think that, and again, it depends on. I think you probably need a bit of a broader perspective than one couple. You need to speak to a lot of couples like this, but it always takes work, doesn't it? And it always takes compromise, and it always takes a focus on, like, assuming that you just meet somebody, fall in love, and it like you never disagree, you never argue, you never.
I don't think that's ever happened.
Yeah.
People might
with them.
People might want you to think it happens, but it just doesn't.
Yeah, but I don't think there's a generational shift. I think there's probably a shift in
societal expectations and pressures.
Yeah, I think there certainly is, because
there's actually evidence to suggest that the increase in secularization has been sort of like, you know, affecting stuff like divorce rates and stuff, because people wouldn't get divorced because religion was like, hey, you know, you can't get divorced because it goes against God, and people would just stay in marriages to sort of
but again it goes back to that thing of like that, are those marriages happy, or are they just people putting up with each other?
I
think there's probably, interesting. Right, we have chatted quite a lot, which I've loved, and thank you for your insights into well-being and happiness. The fairy tale concept I'm definitely going to steal. Thank you, Charlotte. Russell, would you mind me not putting the idea of a clothes shop that where you've got to get weighed as you go in to buy your clothes? I'm not going to put that in the next book, if you don't mind.
About my feelings now.
And on that note, let's move on to the next part of the show, which is
Russell Dames' one-line wonder.
Russell Dames' one-line wonder. Give us, new concept. We'll come on to kindness news at the minute.
Let's move on.
Russell Dames' one-line wonder of wisdom. Give us your best line of wisdom, Russ.
Always buy a Ninja product.
Good advice. And on that note, we will be bringing back Russell Davies' One Line Wonder of Wisdom next week. So be prepared, Russ. And on that note, let's move on to
Kindness news.
and you can do the news this week, Charlotte.
Yeah, I've got them open. I prepped for this. Okay. Oh, fundraiser for victims of earthquake in Turkey and Syria. I'm trying to ignore the little one in your camera, but she keeps popping her in. Okay. Norfolk residents are being invited to a fundraising event for the victims of the recent earthquakes in Turkey and Syria.
Hold on. We are a global podcast. We are a global podcast with thousands of listeners across the world. Why are we focusing on some small, tiny provincial town in the UK
You know,
like Norfolk?
that we're nowhere better, in my opinion, than Norwich.
Right, but for our American listeners and our Canadian, do they even they'll know London, Russ?
No,
Are they going to know
they know Norwich City, the Yo-Yo Club.
Norwich what? Right, got it. Tell us about what's going on in that small provincial backwater.
In partnership with local Turkish and Syrian residents in Norfolk County. I'm watching Dad's reaction as a reason.
This is like Alan Partridge, honestly. It's just. Are we on Norfolk Digital all of a sudden?
Well, this is from Norfolk County Council. So,
sorry, are we the propaganda arm for Norfolk County Council now? Right, no, genuinely though. What's going on in Syria and Turkey and the earthquake is serious. So stop making a joke of it, Raz, please. Let's talk about this seriously.
Okay. Norfolk County
Stop
Council.
cheering every time Charlotte says Norfolk and doing it silently so nobody sees you. Yeah? I can see you.
He even turns his mic off to do it so he doesn't make any sound. Norfolk County's Council Specialist Social Work Team, the people from abroad. I'm going to minimise you both. Oh no, it doesn't minimise you all the way. Anyway.
Right, remember we're on a podcast, Charlotte, please.
Okay. Are holding a fundraising event from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. on Sunday, 19th of March, Blackfriars Hall. This all-ticket event will feature presentations about the impact of the earthquake on the Turkish and Syrian communities locally and in the earthquake zone. Tickets cost £40 each, with all proceeds, I was going to say proceedings, I was like, that doesn't make sense contextually, going to charity, and are now available for this event. Local Turkish and Syrian restaurants and caterers are providing a buffet meal, and there will be a raffle along with some entertainment, including music from Bilal Al-Asali, a British-based Syrian singer and entertainer. With the fundraiser due to be held on Mothering Sunday, the focus will be on the Turkish and Syrian mothers and grandmothers who have been affected by the disaster, as well as all those sadly killed during the earthquakes. Leader of the Norfolk Council said the devastation caused by these earthquakes and the images that have emerged as rescuers have worked tirelessly to save lives have moved us all.
Is that it?
Yeah, there's a huge chunk more, but it's just details on the event.
Right. So I'm gonna give a shout out to some guests that we're trying to get booked now. There's a I went to, I think I mentioned about it on last week's episode. There's a amazing. I went not this week, the week before. I went to an amazing event called Ukraine Rocks to raise money from Ukrainian refugees, and all of the proceeds went to an organisation called Refugee Support UK. A guy called Paul runs that, and he's currently in Turkey and Syria to see what he can do. Refugee Support UK to help those guys. Cope with the devastation of losing your home better. So amazing stuff that they're doing. We're going to be interviewing them and showcasing the brilliant work they do later on. He's booked, yeah. So we've got him in, and I'm really looking forward to that one. And just yeah, I mean, I think for me it comes back to that fact that how lucky are we? Do you know what I mean? Like to live in a place which is relatively secure, relatively wealthy. We're not going to hopefully lose our homes or lose our lives. So knowing that, can we help people who really need our help? And as a common humanity, support people. I certainly did by going to the event, but also making an additional donation after. I'm really pleased, and I'd recommend that if you can afford it. I know it's tough for a lot of people. You help people in that dire straits too.
Yeah, I agree.
Bev. Okay, next story is about a struggling bookshop, something we all love, bookshops, and how Twitter and kindness saved those struggling bookshops. COVID lockdowns and the cost of living crisis has massively altered UK high streets. Over 17,000 shops closed their doors for good in 2022, with independent retailers, many of which are the lifeblood of communities, hit hardest. Consumers, however, aren't prepared to take these changes lying down. Sapphire Bates, owner of Book Bodega, love that name, in Ramsgate. What would you call your shop, Russ? Have we decided or not?
What would I call my shop? What bookshop?
A bookshop where to buy books you've got to get weighed as you come in. Think
Books
about
for
it.
you.
Books for you. Route 1. Posted Sapphire Bates, owner of Book Bodega in Ramsgate, Kent, posted an appeal to Twitter this week after quite a few months threatened to shut their seafront establishment. Winter is killing us, wrote Sapphire alongside a picture of the empty store. It's so quiet and we need to make £800 by Tuesday to pay our bills. Within hours, celebrities including crime writer Ian Rankin and presenter Sue Perkins had shared the post, and there it's been viewed by over 6 million people. Not only was Book Bodega saved, it found a new base of passionate customers around the world and sparked an outpouring of support for both Ramsgate and independent businesses. Sapphire continues, my friend suggested just being honest on book Twitter and sharing a link to our online shop to see if anybody wanted to buy a book. We thought it was worth a go and posted it as expected, expecting to sell 8 or 9 books and get closer to paying the bills. The bookseller's account went from 500 Twitter followers to 8,800, and the income generated through the publicity saved that bookshop. Now, it's an interesting one, isn't it? You know, we're all guilty. I certainly am of buying my books on Amazon. You know, that's probably the go-to to get books. But I'm also a massive advocate of small business. As you guys know, we run a small family business.
Yeah.
And the importance of those small business people to a local community and economy are huge. And I know that the big companies give a lot of employment and stuff like that. But having the small business owners and supporting small business owners in your local community, I think is vital. What do you guys think?
I think that's very important, and I think you get diversity when you have a mix of big business with smaller, more bespoke.
Yeah, it makes for a diverse economy, right? That's the important thing.
I've noticed particularly in our town, it's full of places to eat, betting shops, no sort of clothes or anything like that. They've all shut down because people didn't support them.
Yeah. So what you're saying, Raz, there's a gap in the marketplace for what? A clothes shop.
Mm.
What would be a good model for that, Raz?
I've got nowhere to put the weighbridge.
The weighbridge? How many of the people coming into the shop are you assuming?
Yeah,
What's the matter with a set of scales?
Oh, you got to be proper heavy to come in my shop.
Right, so to come in your shop, is there a minimum weight? And if so, what is it?
if you're under 26 stone, the clothes will fit you like a tent.
You've got a minimum weight of 26 stone.
Yeah.
Interesting. On that note, Charlotte's cringing a bit.
I had something to say, and now it's leaving me slowly, so I'm gonna get out quickly before it's all gone in the tent-like clothes that Russ is gonna be selling in his shop on the weekend.
Go on, tell us, Charlotte.
Yeah, I think I'm really lucky that like there's a lot of chains and stuff around here, but there's also a lot of like little independent places, and there's a couple of places where it's like they're not entirely like independent, but they're still small businesses. Like there's a couple of places where there's like we've got one or two. We've got multiple locations within the city, but it's all run within just like. And I like going to like the little independent game stores as well, which is always fun.
Well, that's the thing. You just get diversity, and my experience is that you get proper experts in those shops because they're passionate about what they do.
Totally
There's a I mean near where we live, there's a shout out to the Hop Inn. There's a award-winning microbrewery, and you go in there, and instead of just like sort of meeting friends for a drink in the pub, we go in the microbrewery, and there's a story around what you're, and it's completely different in terms of concepts. Let's move on because we have chatted quite a lot on this episode, and it's going to be a long one. Let's move on to the interview. The interview today is with a guy called Sam Oates. Sam does loads of amazing stuff, runs a brilliant recruitment business, but also talks a lot about mental health and is an advocate for a mental health charity. Part one of the episode is now. Let's talk to him.
Sam, thank you so much for joining us on the Kindness Project. How are you today?
I'm really well. I'm good. Like I said, I'm just a bit all over the place. I'm at my brother's house looking after his two boys whilst he gets to go away and enjoy his birthday. So,
where's your brother going for his birthday?
Do you know what? I don't even know. I think it's.
He just said, "Have the kids. I'm off."
He just said, "Have the kids. I'm off." Exactly. That's pretty much what happens. And I get left this like note with all the things that I've got to do.
Gotcha.
And it just confuses the hell out of me. But
and it sounds like you've got a bit of a fun evening on your hands because your daughter's coming over as well. So you've got 3 under 8s in the house. Is that right?
3 under 8s, and when they get together, especially my daughter Isabella and Teddy, once they get together, they are just terrors. Amazing. So I'll be looking forward to that tonight. I think it might be an early night for them.
I had a really interesting conversation this week. I've had a couple actually about my kids are a little bit older. So Charlotte's 18, she's at uni, so it's 10. And the 2 conversations I had this week were around the lines of there was somebody who had a sort of 3-year-old, and I said, I'm never going to experience that because we don't plan on having any more kids. I'm never going to experience that like sort of really exciting period of a child's life where they're doing all the new stuff.
Yeah.
But I also realised in a subsequent conversation that I'll miss the bits where they're jumping around and you can't control them and all that sort of stuff. So there's always a double-edged element to it, isn't there?
Yeah, and sometimes, and the thing is, you think to yourself, I remember when Isabella was little, and I thought, God, I can't wait till this is over. But once it's over, it's over.
Yeah. There is that element to it. We will, and I know with all our guests, I send over a bunch of preparatory conversations, but warn you that we might go off on a tangent.
Yeah,
I think that tangent's going to start before we even begin the interview. But the bit that's interesting for me, and this is something when I look at my own life, I've reflected on quite a lot. When you had Isabella as your daughter, isn't it?
Yep.
When you had Isabella, did your perspective on life change?
Honestly, in the first 2 years, I would say no. And I'll give you a reason why. It was because I was suffering quite badly with stress, anxiety, and I had mental health conditions, and I was also on and off drinking a lot as well. And I said as soon as I had my daughter that would change, because I grew up really in a family with an alcoholic father, and I said that I'll never do that. And it took me 2 years to actually to stop that. So no, it didn't. I really thought it would change my perspective. My perspective changed about 3.5 years ago when I chose a different path in life, and now my perspective around being a father is like amazing. Like I absolutely love it. It's I've really taken to it because I'm less self-absorbed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's when you get the ego out of the way, isn't it?
Yes.
Sometimes when that perspective changes. So we've explored that a little bit, and I'm sure we'll explore that during the thing. But just for the purposes of our listeners, and so we can actually get a proper introduction,
Sure.
Sam, before we start the interview, tell our listeners a little bit about you.
Okay, so I'm Sam, and I run a recruitment business called Recruit UK, and I have done for 15 years. In the last couple of years, I've also set up a brand called the Financial Planner Life, and that's going from strength to strength. I set that up initially as a podcast to provide an insight and a window into the financial planning profession, because the profession itself is lacking in its ability to attract second careerists and graduates and basically interest from anybody to come in and join it as a career. It's hemorrhage. It's losing financial advisors because of the aging population of advisors. There's a huge amount of people out there that need financial advice. So I thought, right, what can I do? I brought on financial advisors onto my podcast, and I got them to talk about their careers. And it's gone from strength to strength. So I've been doing that for the last couple of years, over 100 episodes. And with the Financial Planner Life, it's developing into like a networking tool. So I'm interviewing fintech companies now, and I'm setting up marketing community. I've got all these different facets, and yesterday I was in at St James's Place doing a wellness and well-being presentation around men's mental fitness and men's mental health. So it's really been allowing me to be creative, because I'm very much a creative at heart. So a businessman, I would say entrepreneurial, individual, fitness fanatic, mental fitness, health and well-being, living a very happy, grateful life, really. That's me.
Amazing, good stuff. And what I mean, I want to talk about clients primarily, but as we're talking about the financial planning element and in terms of what you do, help me understand what you think the gap is, because I've been a financial planner now for 20 years and I absolutely love it. I think it's one of the best jobs in the world. Why can't we attract people into our profession as much as some of the other professions like law and accountancy, do you think?
One, I think there isn't a direct route into the profession as laid out as such for accountants and solicitors, right? Their connection between universities, accountants, solicitors has been there for a long, long time. There's always been a simple entry route into the profession. In fact, it's probably massively oversubscribed. Now, the financial planning profession has only really become a profession in the last decade, you know?
Yeah, it's evolved, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's evolved.
It's still quite young.
Yeah, initially before that, it was sales, wasn't it? You know, I didn't think it had a real difficulty in attracting people when it was more of a sales type role pre-RDR. It wasn't an issue. But what you'll find now is that a lot of financial planning firms just don't talk about the career of a financial advisor. So if you go on their websites, it's very much around what they do and what they can do for the client. And more often than not, it's very vanilla and boring. So even if I was somebody interested in, I wonder what the financial advisor does, not there. No one's really talking about it. No one's educating about the career of. So financial planning firms need to up their game, and they need to talk about on their websites the culture and the values of their business and what it's like to work there within it, intertwine that in with the values and the culture of what are the type of clients that they represent.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that's the challenge, isn't it? That's where there's a bit of gap. And I know there's a lot of innovations going on in the profession about doing that, but I think, as you say, it's still relatively early on in that journey. Now, we are called the Kindness Project for a reason, so we could talk about financial planning for a reason. I'm more than happy to do that on a typical Tuesday, but as Fridays are my Kindness Project day, I want to talk about how, both in business and in life, your kindness is part of your life. And I know that we share some values in that regard. But also, I want to really focus later on in the interview on men's mental health and the challenges we've got there. But let's first talk about, I think we start the interview talking about some of the challenges you've faced along the way. Tell me a little bit about them.
So when you say challenges in what respect? In business or?
Yeah, let's talk about the business ones first.
Okay, cool. So I think like with anybody who embarks on a career, right? I was 27 years old. I moved from financial services as a trainer. I used to train out financial products for Aviva. I moved into recruitment because I wanted to earn money. That was my, I was about 27 years old, so I was quite old really to get into recruitment. It's quite a younger individual's game. People used to do it when they graduate from university. So I wanted to earn some money. I moved into the recruitment profession, and some of the struggles that I experienced in the very, very beginning, I kind of fell into it, right? After about 2 years of being quite good at it, it was a very small little business, and it was quickly established that I was probably the highest biller there. Two guys left, and Stuart, who was running the business, thought, oh no, if Sam leaves, there goes my business.
Right.
So he offered me 50%. And I took it because I'm an entrepreneurial type individual and I always wanted to have my own business. So I took this 50%, but by doing so, I went onto a director's salary. And when I went onto a director's salary, I no longer earned any bonus. So the sneaky bugger.
Your income actually went down. Yeah.
Yes.
Welcome to the world of business ownership.
Yeah, exactly. So then what ensued then was a long journey of building a business. And, I wasn't a business owner. I didn't own a business. I was somebody who was just doing what I wanted, the way I wanted, and the money the way I wanted. So I had to kind of learn so many different aspects of running a business. And the type of person that I am, sales and marketing driven and wanting to look good, I started to invest a lot of time in the marketing side and the development of the brand and all that kind of stuff. And you just hit wall after wall after wall when you're starting from scratch, hiring the wrong people, not having the right processes, and you fail. And I would honestly say, I've been doing it for like nearly 15 years. And I would honestly say over the last 2 years, it's now where I feel like I'm getting it.
In the corner.
Yeah, I've got an amazing team around me, managers. I've got individuals that are doing crazy, really good things. We've broken the processes down. We've simplified things. We've got an amazing marketing team. All of a sudden, I've surrounded myself with better people, delivering better processes, better development plans for individuals, putting the employees at the heart of what we're doing as opposed to what I think is right, for instance.
Yeah.
Made a massive impact. And the people we've got around us now, the values are fantastic, and that's what you need, good support around you. As soon as I let go of the reins, let go of control, that was when I started to actually really enjoy myself.
Yeah, empowering people to do the best they can is a big step, isn't it?
Yeah.
How much of that and it's funny enough that coincides with the changes you made in your own life. How much of that was about you?
A lot. Yeah. I think I was a control freak.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I was holding on to the reins. I wanted things done my way. I wanted people to do the things that I wanted them to do. I wasn't taking into account individuality, personal issues with
essentially losing out on the talent as well, right?
Yeah.
The talent people have got by doing that. That's interesting. And talk to me about what's the biggest change you think personally you've made in the last couple of years that's got you to this point? Happier, healthier, better business.
One word. I did this. I went to St James's Place yesterday, and I did a men's mental fitness and wellness. I hosted and presented to loads of financial advisors about men's mental health and men's international health. I've suffered with my mental health for years. From a very, very young age, I was up and down with anxiety, depression. I was always somebody that drank quite a lot, quite a binge drinker. Used that as my means to deal with my stress, etc. Thursday, Friday night, Saturday. Yeah. Came to a point where 3.5 years ago, I hit the rock bottom, and I just could not understand how I could carry on living my life the way that I was living my life. I was beaten into submission, basically. And that day I put my hand up and I asked for help, and I ended up having to go to a 12-step process and actually get myself stopping drinking alcohol. And one of the most amazing things happened that day when I put my hand up. For 10 years, I tried to stop, fail, typical of somebody that's caught up in a bad habit. But that day I walked into that room, the obsession left me because I, at that stage, understood and learned the power of listening and talking. I listened to all these other people who were expressing that drinking wasn't their major problem, it was their thinking. And as soon as they started talking about what was going on in their heads, I was instantly able to identify with them what was going on in my head. And no word of a lie, Chris, that day, the obsession around drinking and not drinking left me. It completely left me, and I haven't had a drink 3.5 years. And it was that day that my transformational change happened. Now, I thought drinking was my problem. I removed that, and I was left with me. I was left with, like, you know, there's this saying in, like, the 12 steps, ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing? Because, like, you're just left with this wreck around you, and your brain's not working, and you can't think straight. So I had to kind of reprogram.
There's nowhere to hide, right?
Yeah, I had to deal with my problems, and I had to work through a program that helped me identify basic, like CBT, cognitive behavior. I had to identify these thoughts in my head. What's real? What's false? Evidence appearing real. And I had to work a program, and I had to do that. And part of that program was also working on myself, but then working to help others.
Yeah, amazing. And that the value that helping others gives to your own life, right? Because you learn from them, but also kindness to others kicks in all of those things. What I'm interested in, Sam, and again, if there's anything that you're not comfortable sharing, please don't. And I want to make sure that this is a safe space to have a conversation. What was the biggest story you were telling yourself that wasn't true?
Biggest story I was telling myself that wasn't true was I was not good enough.
Interesting.
Every single day I was carrying around a voice in my head that was constantly attacking me. It was constantly putting me down, and it was constantly telling me that everything I was doing was not good enough. I was never good enough. And it was constant. Like it was absolutely constant. And we talk about kindness, right? And one of the things I learned through meditation was being able to sit with that voice and identify that voice.
Yeah.
Well, I started to put a name to it, and I started to put a face to it, and I started to create this character in my head. And when I created this character in my head, it was this scared little boy.
Yeah.
It was this emancipated, scared little boy who was full of fear and also full of resentment and was hiding. And he was 6-7 years old, almost. And I can describe it as being Gollum-like,
right,
from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And I used to meditate on it, and that voice would come in. And you know what I started to do? And I learned this through something Michael Singer, the Untethered Soul, was to be able to sit in a seat within your consciousness and be able to observe that voice. And I started from that seat talking in a kind and loving way to the Gollum-esque character. And I built a relationship, and I started to be kind and loving, because ultimately, what would I do if a 5 or 6 year old little boy who was scared as that in my head came to me, it materialized in front of me? I want to put my arms around them. I want to tell them everything's going to be okay.
Thing, isn't it? This is such an interesting point you make. We wouldn't treat other people the way that we treat ourselves sometimes. You know, you'd never ever, want to impose the self-doubt we impose on ourselves to other people. We just wouldn't do it. We'd want to be a positive, encouraging thought. But it's being, as you say, it's being aware of that and managing that is the big talking point. Now, again, I've sent you the questions, but I'm going to jump around a bit because we're on this particular subject. What do you think it is about men that mean that we are not particularly good, and literally, unless we learn to, at those conversations?
I think it's an ingrained idea that we have
what masculinity looks like.
What masculinity looks like, and what we've been encouraged to believe is what a man should do, which is shut up and get on with it. And I think it's probably been since like the war. I think more so then, where you just had to shut up and get on with it. You didn't show your emotions because you couldn't during a period like that. And it's almost kind of like that war mind, you know, like if you're going through it as a civilian or whether you're going through it as you're going to war, that uncertainty, and you just got to get on with it, right? And that I admire, and the mind is great. But I think generations of families have passed that down, and that's the idea of what a man should be.
There is a difference between resilience and emotional openness, and I don't think they're mutually exclusive. You know, it's interesting.
I think there's that, but I also think it's just, again, it's masculinity, right? It's this idea that men shouldn't show their emotions. It's very interesting because I speak to men and they talk to their wives or they talk to their girlfriends, but they won't talk to another guy. But girls will sit with each other and talk to each other about anything, right?
So I've got to tell you this story, and again, I've shared this quite a lot, both on the interview I did this morning and I've just talked about it quite a lot this week. I became a chartered financial planner in 2019, but didn't get the chance to do the graduation until Friday.
Right, yeah, well done.
So I was really pleased about taking my dad. We had a lovely day. My wife came down, my dad came down, my cousin came down. She was over from Jersey, and we had lunch at Tom Kerrigan's place in London. And we're all sitting there chatting, and my dad's sitting next to me. And my dad's 70, so I'm like you, I'm in my 40s. My dad's 70 odd. 74, I think. I might have aged him there by a year, so I might be in a bit of trouble. But he turned around to me and said, "You know what? Your granddad, who I was really close to growing up, your granddad would have loved to be here because he'd be so proud of you." And I was super emotional. I was like, tears in my eyes. I was like, "Thank you for saying that. That means a lot. I love you, Dad. I hope you know that." And he turned around to me and went, "I feel the same way."
Oh.
And my instant reaction is, you are allowed to say you love me, right? You are allowed to be as emotionally open, just to be really direct and go, "You know what, I love you too." And it's interesting, isn't it? How and again, I'd be really interested in your perspective on this. We have made progress in terms of having more open conversations, but even my dad, who's like super supportive and like does loads of stuff right, just has got this perception of masculinity that stops him having that conversation with somebody who's really close. What do you think?
I think it's a generational thing. I think it's changing. I think, your likes of Stormzy, your likes of Tyson Fury, Paddy the Baddy from the UFC, all opening up and talking about their mental health problems and talking about their emotions, and also talking about the severity of, if you don't deal with it, where it can actually go, ultimately suicide. I mean, 3/4 of all suicides in the UK are male. More men report have psychological issues, but seek less help than women do. So they have more psychological, so men are just inherently not going out to look to solve their mental health problems. They're burying them and they're minimizing them. But I do believe it's a generational thing. I believe the generation coming through, and that's not to say that young men are all of a sudden going to be saved, right? Because young men are and we're doing a lot of work around boys at the moment, and young men are, imagine this, Chris, right? You and I have been in a generation, right, where there weren't even mobile phones.
Yeah.
Right. And look at it now, the accessibility, as soon as you enter this world, how connected we are to this superhighway of information and marketing, of what we think, of what you think you should, of what the internet thinks and marketers and advertising companies think you should look like and what you should buy, and the pressures upon you to attract a sexual partner, and all of these things that men are now just never been used to. Women have had it with magazines around modeling and makeup and this idea of what women should be. Men have never had that. And these young boys are coming into the world and they've got this perception of they should have big muscles and they should have this and they should have that and they should have this car and they should have all the money, and if they don't, they're not going to get the girl. I mean, it's unbelievable pressure upon their shoulders. And do you know what one of the big things is? And I was talking about this with somebody yesterday, right? Young boys, kids in general, right? Let's say when they go onto their computers, nothing wrong with computers and computer games in my eyes, right? As long as it's done in the right way and you're not getting super addicted to it. They're going onto their computers and they're logging in and they're putting their headsets on. Now, when I was younger and I played computer games, there'd be 6 or 7 boys in the room.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was a communal thing,
Are we
wasn't it?
connecting with each other anymore in any which way? No, we're not. We're chucking stupid earphones on. We're communicating through social media. We're not seeing how people's facial expressions feel when you're rude and negative towards somebody.
Yeah.
We're lacking empathy.
My 10-year-old, she the pandemic was different, and there wasn't that sort of social and emotional connection with other kids. But we live in a little cul-de-sac where there's a number of different families, and I love it when she plays out. Do you remember old school playing out? We just go and have a go. You know what, Sam? And I will do this at some point when I get the time. But I've been threatening with the local hospice we support.
Yeah.
Do this thing called, and again, I'm definitely going to take my name out of it. But effectively, it's going to be called Playground Games, right? Where we get a bunch of adults and a bunch of kids just to have a massive game of runouts for charity. That sounds to me like an amazing day out. So that connection of just playing face to face with other kids and being social as opposed to doing that is I think incredibly important.
So that's part one of the interview with Sam. Part 2's next week, Russ, right?
Yeah, part 2, yeah. And then we've got part 3.
Okay, so we've got 3 parts of Sam's interview. Enjoy all 3. And we are ending, as we always end. Charlotte is ready, willing, and able. It's joke of the week.
Okay. Someone stole my mood ring yesterday. Still don't know how I feel about it. You had to school your face there. I saw that.
I don't know how I feel about that joke. And on that note, have a lovely week, and we will see you next week on the Kindness Project. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.